also kind of with Pope Francis, because he called climate change, I believe, um, a pressing global issue with moral implications.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's, what does that mean? Is climate change real in your opinion? Is it is it real? And if so, or if not, either way, what are Catholics to do about it?
Yeah, good. Two bits to that question. The first thing is to think about the climate change, which requires a little bit of a story. Um, so, about 300 million years ago, and for a very, very long time, a lot of the Earth was tropical swamp, and for millions of years, trees were growing and photosynthesizing. And photosynthesis involves fixing, that's capturing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, um, and turning it into cellulose, which is carbohydrate basically in the trunks of the trees. And then these huge tropical forests would slowly, the trees would fall down, they'd sink into the water, and they didn't decompose because there was no oxygen. The decomposition of that carbon-based material requires oxygen. And that material then turned into coal um, under the Earth. So hundreds of millions of years of fixing or removing of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere was then being stored as fossil fuels in the ground. And simultaneously, or an overlapping period, there's a huge amount of phytoplankton in the ocean, which also are photosynthesizing, and they fix this carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in as calcium carbonate in their shells, which then sink to the bottom of the ocean, get buried by sediment, and turns into oil. So for a very, very long time, a huge amount of carbon dioxide was being removed from the atmosphere and stored under the ground. Now, since about 1850, with the Industrial Revolution, over literally, I don't know, it's not even 200 years yet, we've burned a lot of that material and released back into the atmosphere a huge amount of carbon dioxide. So a very long period of sequestration, of fixing, and a very short period of release. So, and we can see this when we look at the atmospheric data. We can see a sudden and incredibly recent and unbelievably marked increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide, which seems entirely logical. Of course, that's going to happen. It was there, it was stored and hidden away, and we've suddenly burnt it and released it. So what that seems to have done, we've been anticipating, since an Irish scientist actually called Tyndall in the 19th century, he anticipated that if we did this, if we suddenly increased atmospheric carbon dioxide, it would induce a kind of greenhouse effect in which it would trap more of the sun's energy and start a process of warming the surface of the Earth. So what we've done is very coherent with a rather straightforward theory of how the Earth might warm. So I don't think, as a kind of a priori and completely theoretical approach to this, we should not be surprised if our human behavior has modified the climate. It follows very naturally from what we've done by this rather coherent sequence of events. So, corresponding to that, in my own experience as an ecologist, I've worked with a number of temperature time series which show really significant warming over the last while. So I think, as a corollary to that, we don't expect, although we have this very clear theoretical understanding of what's likely to happen, we don't expect this to be a completely linear process. So it's not like you release X amount of carbon dioxide and Y happens to the climate, because global climate processes are incredibly complex with all sorts of feedbacks and uncertainties. So I would say, theoretically, it seems incredibly likely to me that climate change would happen. And as far as the data follow, it seems equally evident that it is happening. Okay, so yes, climate change seems to me uh, evident on both those theoretical and empirical um, modes. I think a legitimate question then is are the moral implications to it? And again, following from what we've been talking about before, our responsibility for care for the earth, if we are modifying ecosystems, whether it be throwing a bottle into our backyard or modifying the global climate system, yes, there are moral implications because we're moral beings and our actions have real transcendent spiritual consequences. Um, I think it is legitimate to ask then, what should we do about it? And I think that's when it becomes much less obvious, because now we are in the realm of engineering solutions to particular environmental problems. And there could be lots of different ways, which is the right way of dealing with it. And it may not be that, I don't know, wind turbines or electric cars or this or that proposal from this political party or that is the best way of doing it. And other people, and I thought Jordan Peterson would forgive me for saying this, I think have proposed that actually the cost, the social economic cost of large-scale climate mitigation will be too high for a lot of people in the developing world. And in fact, we'd be better focusing on increasing their social economic status, because environmental care follows from getting past your primary need to survive. So the priority perhaps is to help people in poorer countries to advance to a higher level of economic development so they can participate more in environmental protection. And so perhaps that would be a better priority. But these are open questions. What exactly we do, I think, is not as obvious as recognizing that, yes, there's a problem with moral implications.
I appreciate that explanation. That is a good way to go through it. And I'll have to personally think about that. Thank you so much for listening, for your time. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And go to the link in the description below to support this channel. Again, I hope you enjoyed it, and God bless.